Hi, everyone. This is Raquel.
Hi, and this is Jennifer.
Welcome to Madness Cafe.
This is a feminist podcast where we talk about women's issues, politics, and health and wellness.
And where those issues intersect. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Madness Cafe. Today, Jennifer and I are joined by Simon Fokt. Yes, that is how his name is pronounced, people. It is not spelled that way, but that is how it's pronounced. I have not started swearing yet. Simon holds a PhD in philosophy from the University of St. Andrews, Scotland, and currently lectures at HTW Berlin. His academic work focuses on aesthetics, ethics, and metaphilosophy. He is the founder and manager of the Diversity Reading List, a leading online resource which promotes equality in academia. He's also the director of TELdesign Limited, which designs and develops academic and corporate online courses and training programs. Simon also has a new program called Man's Compass, which I will let Simon go into, because I think Simon will do a far better job of telling us all about it than I will. And apart from writing, Simon enjoys playing the double bass, traveling in his van, and woodworking. Simon, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me and for a great introduction. Lovely to be here. Mm-hmm.
We have been super excited about this episode after having come across your writing on Medium. And I think what drew us in, you have titles like Men Are Changing, Please Be Kind. Men are hard shells and soft bellies. Want gender equality, become a man's ally. This is one of my favorite ones. Feminism has a PR problem. What is it like to be hated by women? How to compliment a woman? The favorite pastimes of progressives, shooting at the allies.
Shooting at allies, indeed. Yeah.
Yes, shooting at allies. And we both think it's a very unique perspective into feminism and what it's like to be a man with all of the changing roles, etc. Tell us a little bit about you and how you got started writing like this.
Sure. Yeah, I think that I have considered myself a feminist pretty much my whole adult life, really. And I went to study cultural studies, I went to study philosophy, and I was kind of embedded in this environment all the time. My partners were all staunch feminists, and I always felt like I was trying to find myself in it a little bit more as well. And I felt like there's a lot of discussion about how the world should be and how we should change and how the society should change and how we particularly should change to make this happen. But not much of it was actually taking the perspective of what it's actually like to be a man in the society into account. And the more I was thinking about it and the more I was reading about it, the more I could see that there's a lot of literature out there that tells men how not to be and what not to do. And there's very little out there that actually says, well, how to be, what to do. And I think that many men right now are lost. Many men don't know how to find themselves in this world in which some of those values that we were taught, some of those values that we're still being taught, all the films that we see, people don't stop watching James Bond just because Pixar decided to make more woke films, right? We're still taught that men should be those, defenders, providers, and have all of those roles in the society. And then we're told something completely different. And it is just sometimes quite difficult to find your way around it. And it is particularly difficult because so often women and many, many men who are much more kind of, let's say, advanced in their, or like have moved forward a bit more, are justifiably impatient. That, come on, we don't want gender equality in 100 years. We want gender equality now.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
we
we
kind
do.
of don't want to, yeah, absolutely. And we don't want to wait on all of those people who are finding it difficult, maybe, or who are confused in all this. But I also think that, well, as with so many things, I don't know, if you keep pressing for something too hard, then it's making it difficult. And I think it is important to recognize basically that, well, some people are experiencing real difficulties with that. They really cannot find themselves in this world, and that continuing to tell them what not to do and being really annoyed with them all the time, while it has a role to play. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't press for things, because some things should change and there should be definitely pressure. But I think that we also need some kind of more positive narratives, something that will make people feel, well, why am I even doing this, or what is my role in this new world? Like, how do I find myself in this new world? And some sort of narratives that will show people, well, there is a place for you in this new world, and it's actually quite nice, right? You can make yourself a pretty good place in here. But people don't see it, and I think that one of the things that I really wanted to do with my writing is to show it a little bit.
Have you been able to, through your writing and through your exploration of all of these topics, have you been able to find yourself as a man in this new world?
So a lot of what I'm writing is to some extent autobiographical, definitely. And there's a lot of reflections that I have had myself about how I process my emotions, for example. How do I deal with criticism? How do I deal with having to find new meaning and all this? So I think it's usually the writing comes after the reflections. Although I did catch myself a couple of times about writing something and going like, that's a very smart thing. I know it in here, but it would be really good if I actually applied it in my life and you knew it in
Absolutely.
here as well.
What popped into my head as you were talking just a minute ago, Simon, before Jennifer asked her question, was the whole dichotomy of we want change now, but hold on, we need to make it palatable for people who aren't on board yet. What comes up for me is parallels to the civil rights movement. You know, like, oh, why is everybody pushing so hard to make these changes now? Oh, what, just slow down. It'll happen. Slow down. Well, people have been, people were moving pretty slow for a while and it didn't happen. Sometimes you need to speed some stuff up, right? You need to speed shit up. And, you know, it's sort of this weird position of, yeah, you want everybody to be on board, but also people need to do their own work too. Yeah, so I don't know, I'm having, that's where a bit of ambivalence comes in for me is, yeah, I want change to happen right now. Yeah.
I fully understand, and I'm actually grateful to one of my readers who has actually brought up the very same comparison and said that Martin Luther King, in our modern kind of description of him, has been really quite sanitized. That the whole civil rights movement is really represented right now as just like all those people making those very rational arguments in a very calm way and all this. And it wasn't that. It was like there was some street fighting going on and there's some serious pushing going on. And I think that this is a very valid point. And I think that it is important that this happens, and I don't want to absolutely take any value from this. And I think that there are definitely some figures out there who are, I don't know, staunch, dedicated misogynists who cannot be argued with and need to just be, they just need to be fought and defeated. That's it. But I think there's a space for everything. I don't want to say don't do that.
Right.
I just want to say that, well, while we do that, can we also do something else as well? And I think that a lot of what I'm trying to do in my writing is to speak to people who are kind of already on board or at least open to the idea, maybe are not yet, don't know how to do it, or maybe find it difficult to break out of certain, you know how it is. It's like, it's very easy to talk to people about those sort of problems and get them convinced when you speak to them one-on-one. But then they go out there to the world, and it turns out that, all their peer circle validates their misogyny. Or it turns out that actually being a bit aggressive does actually get you a better job. Or it turns out that there are certain social mechanisms that still make it beneficial to be, well, problematic in various ways. But, many of those people might be quite willing to change. They might be quite willing to, look into new ways of being or exploring new ways of being a man. And they're not really actually against feminism. They're not really actually, misogynist and all this. They're just kind of a bit lost. So these are the sort of people that I would like to primarily address. And I think that this does not mean that we shouldn't really be quite hardcore when, fighting like proper misogyny. We absolutely should. And we absolutely should not, cut any slack to the likes of Andrew Tate and his followers and all that. By all means, fight them until they're down. But at the same time, not all men are like that. And I don't mean to use the hashtag not all man in here. Sorry,
You
that
got
came
that
out.
hashtag in there.
But it's like some people kind of need to be reached in other ways as well. And I think it's important that we don't just do one thing,
Mhm.
either one or the other, that we kind of approach it on multiple fronts. And I will be very happily supporting people approaching it on those other fronts. I don't want to do it myself. I would like to focus on something slightly different. So I'm
So,
not definitely not taking any value out of kind of a more radical approach, definitely.
right. So basically meeting
Mhm.
people where they are.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
One of the things that was most compelling to me in your writing is something that I have personally been trying to speak about for a while, but I'm not a man. So it was interesting to read it from your perspective. But one of the things I've often noticed on all social media platforms, not just Medium, is that there will be a young man questioning his identity, questioning his programming, questioning his role in society. And then he just gets slammed by the feminists. They're like, what a stupid question. How dare you say that? I don't even know everything that they say.
hmm
Sorry, Raquel?
By some feminists, not all feminists.
No, on
Hashtag
social
not all
media.
feminists.
I agree. Hashtag not all men, hashtag not all feminists, right?
Yeah.
But I have noticed that to happen. And I, in my thought process as a feminist, is like, and I see it both ways too. I see there's times where we need to push and crush.
hmm
But then sometimes I see this young boy is trying. He's like opening his heart to try, and we're slamming him, which causes him to shut down.
Right.
So I guess that's one of the things that drew me to your writing is that you have a perspective of the trying, and then how do we grow the trying into something bigger that actually helps both of us, all of us, helps humanity. I guess I don't even really have a question here other than I want to say thank you for your work. And then how do we support that as we move further into society?
Thanks. Thanks very much for saying that. I think that this is, like you say, this is a large part of the audience that I would like to reach. And this is, I see myself in it. I see the myself who was a first year culture studies student, and I went to start actually reading feminist literature and thinking, oh, I'm a feminist. I think, we live in an equal society and all that. And then I was reading it and go like, oh, wait, I do that. Oh, wait, I also think that, right? And then
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
like discovering this and maybe questioning it a bit. And I just realized very much that this sort of thing is a process. Nobody decides, oh, I'm going to be, I don't know, redefine my masculinity and wakes up on the next morning and is a completely made new person, right? No, it's a process. It takes time and it is going to take time and people are going to make mistakes on the way. And you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, the internet is a place in which criticisms only ever exists in up to 11 setting. It really hurts me to see that you see somebody that I see myself in, right? I see this as a guy who is starting to question some things, maybe wants to, I don't know, discover some new ways of being. And like you say, he does get slammed because he made, I don't know, a slightly insensitive or comment with some sexist undertone. Maybe he said something like, I don't know, I think men should help at home more. And you go like, well, that's a really wrong way to frame it, right? They shouldn't be helping because it's not the woman's responsibility to do it in the first place. So then, and all that, right? And he gets slammed to no end for this.
Exactly.
And you go like,
Exactly.
well, okay. Basically, I think that there is a certain point in which you go like, if you slam everyone like they were, I'm gonna pick on Andrew Tate again. Why not? Like if you make no difference in the way you're slamming Andrew Tate or you're slamming this, person, then it's just not helpful, I think. It's just really not helpful, and it's definitely not supportive. And I think that unfortunately, this does have the potential effect that, well, people just get turned away. Well, this is actually a big inspiration that I took from Bell Hooks. I think Bell Hooks is one of my bigger inspirations in this way, and she writes that nobody, what was the quote? Men cannot change without a blueprint for change, right? And nobody learns to love without being taught how to love. I think it's in the Will to Change book, and I think it's really important because like nobody can change without being kind of shown the way a little bit at least. Instead, we're kind of making this way seem really unattractive to people because I think the way Bell Hooks is writing about it as well is that, people don't really think with or they don't really make decisions on how to be and how to organize their lives. They don't make those decisions with their brains. They make those decisions with their hearts a lot of the time. And if you want to convince someone to question their value system, to question the way they see themselves in society and all this, you don't really need to talk to their brain. You should really talk to their hearts. You should really make them feel
Ugh,
that there is that the world that you want does not exclude them, that it won't be horrible for them, that they can find that it might be confusing at the beginning, but they will find themselves in it. If we are taking such an antagonistic stance, then I think that we're presenting ourselves as just, people who cannot be like, there's no place for me in here. If this
right.
is how I'll be treated all the time, then there's no place for me in here. And then, well, what do I do then? Well, I fall into the warm and loving embrace of incel forums in which everyone validates how I'm feeling and everyone thinks that I'm right and everyone else is wrong. And, once again, it doesn't matter that they're wrong. I wrote this, I think, in the Soft Bellies article the title of what you mentioned. Like they have a undeniable advantage of not kicking you in the belly. It's, I think people very often are not so swayed by the actual rational arguments or by what is actually right. They're swayed by with whom do they feel comfortable, who makes them feel okay, and all this. And I'm not saying that we should coddle and make allowances for people's
Right.
that is absolutely not this. But just like having this little I know gradation of criticism at least, in
Right.
which you criticize people, but somehow relevant to or like adequate to what they actually represent, rather than always up to 11. Like it's a big part of it, and I think it would do a lot as well to present feminism and present kind of the positive change that we would like as something that is just attractive. That could
Yeah.
be that we're not doing because it's like, oh, we're horrible, so we need to change something so we're less horrible. No, we're doing it because we want to build a better world. We want to build a world in which people are happier and we want to be a part of it. And I think it's a great thing. And I think I would really like to build narratives that are kind of built around this, around, hey, world could be a great place. Let's make it happen.
What I hear you saying, Simon, is that
Hmm.
there needs to be a more nuanced approach and a more multifaceted approach. Like, yes, there is room for the full steam ahead, getting stuff
Hmm.
and using the megaphone, getting the message out there. Yeah, there's
Hmm.
definitely room for that. But there's also room for having the conversation of not just one-on-one, but like small group to small group, having questions and having, not sure how to couch things, but coming to the conversation with respect and humility, right? Like knowing, okay, yeah, I'm probably going to say something wrong, or yeah, I'm probably
Hmm.
confused is all hell, but I'm here to learn. Let's have the conversation. And so on the other side, there needs to be someone who is open to, okay, I'm gonna put my guard down. I'm gonna have the conversation
Hmm.
with you because I can see that you're coming at it as a student and wanting to learn and wanting to grow, right? So
Hmm.
it's not just one size fits all, right? In any, movement, whether it's feminism or civil rights, or I mean anything. I mean there's always going to be multiple levels and multiple
Hmm.
ways to do this. And I think your writing is another way to do that. It's we're not painting with a broad brush. We've got a whole set of brushes that we can use, and your writing is one of those other brushes. I think there's definitely benefit in coming at it from a different perspective.
I think that's a great way to put it. Absolutely. And I realize how ironic it is to ask for nuance in online discussions. Uh, but uh, uh, but I think that you're absolutely right, and I think that humility is the exact word that I would use in here. I actually co-created a course on intellectual humility at some point with the University of Edinburgh, and I think this is something that we just need in society much more of in general, because this is not the only discussion in which people, stay very firmly in their position and speak past each other and don't really listen to what the other side is saying or don't really want to understand when they're coming from. This is how our politics looks like. This is how a lot of our social debate on pretty much any topic looks like right now. And I think, unfortunately, well, we live in these sort of divisive times, and wouldn't it be fantastic if people had more humility? Well, I guess what we can do is try to inspire it a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. We got to keep working for it.
Yeah.
So, with that in mind, and knowing that our audience is a feminist audience who may or may not understand the men's plight in this issue, what is the confusion that you often write about for the modern man? Why is the modern man confused?
Right. I think that a part of it has to do with the fact that certain values that we have been brought up with telling us how to be or what defines us as men are no longer valuable. Men are not needed in the world as protectors and providers anymore. Women can provide for themselves perfectly well, and there is no Vikings raiding our villages. We don't need to protect ourselves, we need to protect ourselves from. So there's a whole bunch of kind of values that people are still told, and many voices are out there still teaching men that yes, this is absolutely who you should be, which I think is outdated, basically. It's just outdated advice. Men who realize that it's really not needed are like, well, so what are we for? And I think that there is a certain blank in there, and there is a certain emptiness in which we don't really fully know. And I don't think there is an answer to that because the answer probably is, following existentialism, you just need to make up your own meaning, which is the most frustrating answer there is because people like to have a blueprint, people like to have a map or something that guides them. But I think that there is also a number of kind of lower or more localized things. Men are told a lot to be vulnerable and to be more in tune with their emotions, more emotionally intelligent. But men are also quite often ridiculed for being so. And it is quite confusing sometimes. So what am I meant to be? If I'm not vulnerable, then I'm toxic, but if I am, then I'm fragile. So can't win, right? Or for example, if I talk about my problems, then well, it often turns out that my problems are not as big as your problems, therefore I should shut up. And that's also kind of a bit difficult, I think. Um, so I think these would be some of I guess there's some things related to the specific feelings that many men have as well. So many men struggle with loneliness. Many men struggle with the fact that they cannot, because the masculinity that they represent is no longer something that most women or many women are looking for, they find it difficult to find someone. And I'm speaking of heterosexual men in this case, of course. I think that it's very tempting to go for a quick fix and go to some sort of relationship counselor who's probably a pickup artist who's going to teach you some dodgy techniques. And you do get a lot of kind of different voices from different angles, and it is sometimes quite difficult to tell what is the actual thing to follow. It is particularly difficult when, while you try to follow the voices that tell you to be more in tune with your emotions and do all of the things that are valued by women, but then you still can't find anyone. And I think that this is what I see a lot. It seems like a lot of the undercurrent of some of the most misogynistic men online, really at the root of it is the fact that they are just lonely and they cannot find someone. And it's just sad. I think that yeah, those are all preventable problems if we just yeah.
So that's kind of what drives
Mhm.
Andrew Tate's big
Well,
following
exactly, right?
is that loneliness that men are
Mhm.
feeling. Is your writing also for Andrew Tate's following?
I would like to think that my writing might be possibly for the people who are questioning things, and because they don't find anything on the left-hand side of the spectrum, they end up with Andrew Tate. Um,
I see.
and perhaps, I don't know, I would really like to catch those people before they go there. When you look at these sort of, I don't know, role models, let's say, for men, are there any on the kind of more progressive side of the spectrum?
I question that as well. Raquel's got something. What do you got, Raquel?
Okay, what comes up for me is I think, yeah, I think there are role models for men on the new side or whatever, however you want to put it. Like on the Man Enough podcast, I can't think of the guy's name right. Justin Baldoni, that's the name. There's an example, right? There's a role model. There are role models out there. Men have
absolutely.
But what is kind of going through my brain right now is it sounds like men are where women were, or many women were, say like in the 50s, 60s, at the, at earlier stages of feminism. There's some examples right there. I mean, there were plenty of women who were questioning, I mean, hell, up into into the 80s and 90s, there were still women who were, and even now, who were questioning, well, what if I don't want to be a career woman? What if I want to be a stay-at-home mom? How do I? But they did the work. They had the conversations. They did whatever readings. I mean, they did the work and would still consider themselves to be feminists, even though they don't follow the stereotypical,
some of them.
Well, some of them. Sure. I mean, no, I know. Yeah, it's not everybody. It's not always going to be an absolute, but look to how women experienced waves of feminism. Not all the women were like, hey, let's go out and do it. And I'm going to work in a factory or do whatever. This does not exist in a vacuum. People have changed over time. There are examples for men. I think it's...
So is this waves of menimism?
No.
Oh,
I don't think so. I think yes, there is some.
Are you mad that all the men haven't done the work yet?
I'm mad that lots of people haven't done the work yet, men and women.
Lots of women haven't done the work yet.
I know.
Half of the people that are yelling at Simon on his Medium, half of those people are women yelling at him.
Right. And I get that. But yeah, I think everybody needs to do the work. I mean, we all have work to do, and most of us are not doing it. Some people are just sort of like sitting there and bemoaning stuff and not putting the thought into it, not putting the work into it, not trying to exist beyond their own noses, and just saying, hey, make this easy for me. It's not easy for anybody. Do the work. Have the conversations. Do you know? I mean, do you know what I mean?
I fully know what I mean, but I also think that perhaps you're complaining that humans are lazy in general, which they just are.
Some are, sure. I mean, none of this is easy to do, and some people will just go, you know what? I don't want to do it. It's too hard. And I get that.
Absolutely. I think so. And I mean, I think this is why so many populist ideologies are out there as well, because they offer easy solutions and don't require you to think. They are popular with so many people, and for a reason. There is a reason why, like you mentioned, the fact that there's different kind of waves of feminism, and different women also did or did not do the work or opted for one or the other side. Right now, there is a recent YouGov poll in Britain, but it was done over US and a bunch of Western European countries. And in this poll, it turns out that 45% of women do not want to call themselves feminists. So I think that there's always going to be some sort of polarization in all this. I think we probably need some sort of critical mass of people. It's never going to be everybody who will do the work and everybody who will be convinced, but we do need some sort of critical mass of people. Well, I would like to think that perhaps the approach that I would like to take, which is to create narratives which will allow men to find themselves in this new world, is one of the ways to increase this number of people. I do not kid myself that I'm going to reach everyone. I do not kid myself that everyone will find this to be the way that actually speaks to them. Some people will just, but maybe some of them will. And I think that changing the world is not a black and white thing. If I can make a contribution that is 0.01% to something becoming a bit better, then it's better than nothing. And this is, I think, a valuable project nevertheless. And a lot of our discourse is this kind of very black and white discourse. It's either we have done it or we haven't done it, or like why is it not yesterday, and all this. But I do think that at the end of the day, change is gradual, and if each one of us can do a little bit towards it, then we should do, what we have what our skill allows us to do best. Maybe some people, their skill allows them best to stand there with the megaphone and push really hard. I think that my skill perhaps allows me to, reach people in a slightly different way, create some narratives that will allow them to place themselves.
I will admit, I am very impatient.
Mm-hmm.
It's something I try to work on.
Mm-hmm.
But I do applaud you, Simon, for
Mm-hmm.
the work that you're doing because, like you said, I mean, you are reaching people and every little bit helps. So I do applaud you.
Thank you.
Raquel, you have a right to be impatient. You are a Black woman in the United States today. You have a right to be
Absolutely.
impatient.
Yeah.
Yeah. No one's trying to take that away from you.
No, I know. It just, sometimes it can just spill over.
No, you have a right. But okay, I'm curious, Simon. You said in creating this new, for lack of better term, my own term, gender healed world or gender equity world. What does that look like to you? Do you have a vision of what that could look like?
I mean, I think that there is, from men's perspective, unfortunately, there's a lot of just learning to treat women as humans. It is very sad to still admit, but there are just so many ways in which men treat women as prizes, as objects, as proof of their prowess, as a reward or whatever else, and not actually as another human. And I think that unfortunately, this is a narrative that continues to be very strongly pushed by not only media, not only certain political movements, but most world religions and, a lot of ideologies out there.
Sure.
And I think that one of the fundamental ways in which this world, I think, should look like is the core tenet of feminism, which is that we should all be treated equally as humans. And we're not there. And I think that it will still take some time before we are. I also think that it is important that we, in this world, we appreciate that we are perhaps coming from slightly different points and we appreciate each other's points. And as much as men learn to appreciate, how this world and the social structures we're embedded in make life so difficult for women. Also, women and, people of all genders learn to appreciate that there are also some ways in which this world is making life hard for men, in which finding your place in this world is also difficult and living up to certain standards is difficult. I would wish that it is a world in which we can change those standards and we no longer need to be bound by ridiculous requirements for men to never appear weak, or ridiculous requirements for, I don't know, bodily appearance, or for all sorts of other things that have been created by years and years of culture that has been, well, shaped by the patriarchy. Yeah, I think that's really what I wanted to say. Yeah, I don't have a clear vision of this sort of world, but I think that these would be the core things, I think.
I just firmly believe that as a collective, we have to start seeing that vision in order to create it. And the more that we can talk about it, like just hearing you talk about it helps me with my vision, because my vision as a woman without men is incomplete. And you also mentioned all genders. Our vision without
Absolutely.
all genders is incomplete.
I think that it is also what I find really important in this, and what I would like my voice to be a part of, is making sure that this vision includes men as well, and is a vision in which men can feel like there is a place for them. Right now, so many men are resistant to feminism because they feel like the world that is being proposed does not include them, or is so different and alien to them that they don't see themselves in it. And very often this is because they're so used to their privilege that they're not willing to give it up, and that they don't imagine even a world in which they don't have it. And I think that we should find ways in which we could show them that perhaps they're not so much losing their privilege as they're sharing their privilege, or they're helping others to be as fortunate as they are in many ways.
And also gaining something
And
from
also
that.
exactly, and also gaining something from this and being able to be more fully human.
Right.
Because so many of those things that our culture has stupidly labeled as feminine and therefore not worthy of a man are really nice things. Um,
Yes.
and Men would really benefit from being able to have them.
Well,
Um,
like you said, feminism has a PR problem.
I think so.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree with you. I mean,
Mhm.
I think
We've
that's
had that
Jennifer and
debate.
I talk about. Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, we've talked about that before. That
yeah.
way too often feminism is presented as this one big, stark, monolithic thing
Mhm.
when that's not really. I mean, that's not just what it is. I mean, there's so much more to feminism than what some people want to present it as. It's not man bashing, man hating, one way of being and one way of doing. It's like you're saying. I mean,
Mhm.
open it up so that people can be fully human, men and women, people of all genders. Be fully human. Be fully who you are,
Absolutely.
not what
Absolutely.
society is telling you that you should be.
There's
Here, here.
one more topic I want to cover before we run out of time, and it's a little bit
Mhm.
sensitive. Simon, you write a
Mhm.
lot about men's yearning for sex in your writing, to have a fuller, broader sex life. And I think it's a really important topic because, from my perspective as a woman, sometimes I feel as an object of that desire instead of as as a human being in that partnership. Why do you choose to write so much about the longing for sex from your perspective? And what are you hoping to gain from that writing? Because it's very
Mhm.
specific, also.
Yeah, thanks very much for asking. I think I'm yearning to, yeah, I don't think yearning is that. I think I really find it important to write about this because I see that, as we mentioned before, this is what a lot of men struggle with, and this is what a lot of draws a lot of men to follow very problematic voices. And they follow them because those voices promise them that following them will get them more sex, or because those voices present themselves as the sort of people who are very sexual or are very kind of like um, I don't know, yes, very objectifying of women at the same time. So I think it's important because this is a problem that many men are having, and I think that a lot of the anger that those men harbor results from the fact that they just cannot really get what they want in this respect. And I think that this is particularly problematic, and I really explored it in one of the texts, because I think that anger and sexual desire are really the two emotions that men are allowed to display. And we talk a lot about how anger is how men is a proxy for all of those other emotions. When a man is sad, he's gonna get angry. When a man is feeling undervalued, he's gonna get angry, and all of those things. But we talk much less about the fact that sexual desire is very often a proxy for all the positive emotions. Men have a lot of positive, a yearn for a lot of positive emotion, for a lot of validation, for a lot of acceptance, for a lot of just feeling valued and feeling wanted as well, and also feeling desired, but feeling just kind of supported, feeling like if they fall, somebody will catch them, and all of those things. But unfortunately, in our culture, it is still very problematic for men to express that. It is still very difficult for men to do this. And the one way in which people can accept validation without it being unmanly
Mm-hmm.
is through sex.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, that is
and I
so
think
freaking profound.
I think so, and I think that it is really sad that it's gotten to that way because I think that we have a huge amount of emotional needs. All of us do. And there's just absolutely no way in the world that you will ever get enough sex to cover all of your emotional needs. It's just not going to happen. And I think that a lot of men are kind of constantly frustrated by this because they cannot ask for it. They
Right.
cannot ask for those emotional needs to be fulfilled in other ways.
Yeah.
They try to get them fulfilled through sex. They are inevitably not getting enough sex because they cannot it's just humanly impossible. And that spins the whole circle because I think that as much as sexual frustration is a valid problem to have and it's a real problem, the
Mhm.
way in which men respond to it is absolutely horrible a lot of the time
Right.
because they respond to it by blaming women. They respond to it by trying tricks. They respond to it by trying to manipulate people and all this. And I think that so much of the criticism of how men are right now is also has its roots in this. Because
Mhm.
women are sick and tired of being sexualized by men, and rightly so. Meanwhile, men are sick and tired of not being sexualized by women. And like, do you know this excellent project called the Catcalls of the World, I think. Somebody started it at some point. I don't remember what it was. It was a student project. They started by like writing down on the pavement somewhere all of the things that women heard while walking down the street. And then it kind of became a website, and then it like got from city to city, and there's different like people basically just writing. It was kind of I think it predated the Me Too movement, and it was kind of like a big database of what women heard from catcallers on the streets. And do you know what was the top one comment left by men in there? I wish someone told half those things to me,
Oh,
right?
wow. That's
Because
interesting.
and obviously there would be different comments, but coming to the same core, I think many men would want to be objectified a bit more. Many men would want to feel like they are desired and wanted,
Mhm.
and they don't, and they struggle with it. And I think that, finding your way around this is also quite important. But primarily, I think that it is important because it is so difficult. I think men need to learn to accept the full breadth of their emotions and not try to sublimate all of them through sex and not be angry with the whole world that they cannot, fulfill all of those wide variety of emotions they're trying to all pack into one box.
It's another way that patriarchy is damaging men.
Absolutely. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And I
Um,
think I've been to therapy, I've done tons of reading. I
mhm.
think you just solved for me what the root issue in my marriage and divorce was.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Honestly,
Hmm.
because what I felt was all this sexual pressure.
Hmm.
And now I realize that what he was saying was he needed tenderness and support, but
Wow.
all he said was sex, 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 sex.
Hmm.
That's what
Hmm.
I heard. But
Right.
what he was saying was hold me, love me, listen to me, see me. But men don't know how to say that. That's very profound. It
Mhm.
is very, very profound. And I do think this is the root of the gender war. I
We
do
don't
think it
know how
is.
to communicate
Hmm.
with each other. I mean, not just as men and women, but as people. Communication is not most people's strong suit. And neither
Simon,
is
where were
listening.
you? Where were you when I was getting divorced?
I
I
mean,
needed you.
I wish I could say that I have come to this realization before I have made many mistakes in my life as well, but unfortunately that was not the case. So, yes.
Oh, we all learn. Was
Hmm.
there anything in particular that you wanted to say to our audience, maybe to feminists themselves, about how they
Hmm.
respond to men or anything like
Yeah.
that before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think so. You mentioned at the beginning that I wrote one of those texts on becoming a men's ally. And
Yes.
I don't know, iconoclastic because the world is all about being the ally of the underrepresented groups. But I think it is important that men also have you as their allies because the journey that they're on is not an easy journey. And yes, we are absolutely should be impatient and things should, be changing right now, right here, right now. But this change is not easy. And it involves deprogramming yourself from years and years and years of persistent cultural messages and social structures which facilitate misogyny and reward misogyny. It is just not easy to break out of it. You cannot expect someone to just go, "Oh, okay, I'm just going to unlearn decades of my social conditioning." But what would really help with this is just support. It's good allies. And I think that men need that. And I think that men need to really feel like they can actually really be vulnerable and they will not be laughed at, for example. They need to really feel that all this breadth of emotions they can actually express, and nobody will, you know, think less of them for it. They need to feel that although they're losing privilege, they're gaining something as well. And this gain needs to be made obvious to them because people don't see it very often. Well, one of the defining features of privilege is that it's invisible to the people who have it. So then, kind of guiding people a little bit more through that is also useful. As men kind of develop their emotional intelligence and all that, it's just good to have this kind of validation in somebody on their side. And I'm not saying that this is not to say women should do more work. That's ridiculous, right? That's not the point at all, because it is ridiculous to expect a discriminated against group to do the work that really men should be doing in this case. But having allies is important. If it is something that you can do for the people in your life, people whom you love, people whom you want to support, then it is invaluable help. And it kind of really shows that, well, the world that we're building is also a good world for all of us. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think this might be a good spot, Simon, for you to plug your other projects, because what you're talking about is there being a guide of sorts for
Mm-hmm.
men. I mentioned at the very beginning in your bio that you have a new project called the Man's Compass.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this might be a good place to plug that.
Thank you. Yeah. So this is a project that I'm just starting right now. So it's in its nascency. The idea is that the world is changing and it is hard for men to find their place in their changing world. And many people question, well, what are the values that we should be following? How should we be? And this is very much a project that is centered around this, helping men by telling them how to be and not just how not to be. And to do that, I developed this idea of a compass. And this is, I think, quite nice because compass is just something that guides you through life, guides you through a maybe unknown and seemingly unfamiliar or unfriendly world, but, helps you find your place. On this compass, I tried to put the main values that I think should be guiding us, and that's happiness, truth, justice, and also change. Because I think it is really important that we acknowledge that things change
Mm-hmm.
and we need to be ready for it. And there is going to be a bit of chaos in our lives, and world is changing extremely fast right now. And things that you thought were outlandish yesterday, you just need to accept now. But there's also 9 virtues in that, and the values are the sort of ideas that are just out there in the world, but the virtues are the things that you can develop in yourself. And I really tried to find those virtues which I think are important for masculinity as it was traditionally understood as well, but give them a new spin. Courage is so important for men, but it should be also a courage to stand up for all of those who are disadvantaged, right? It should be a courage to change as well. It should be a courage to question who I am. Compassion, kindness, but also honor and confidence and wisdom. And I definitely put humility in there as well because I think it's a very important virtue that we should all develop. So in time, I'm hoping to fill in all the gaps and write a little bit about all of those virtues and all of those values with kind of some real life examples that will perhaps help paint this picture in which men can find themselves a little bit better in this world. And I also like the example of a compass because Jordan Peterson writes about providing you a map through chaos, right?
Yep, yep.
I was poking fun at him a little bit in one of the texts I wrote, saying that don't trust the old man's map, because I think that his map is outdated, and I think
It
that
is.
it is one of those things because this is what he is also trying to do, right? He's trying to offer some sort of set of guidance values to guide you through the world. But I think that his values are outdated. It is really important that men learn to, thank you, that men learn or like get used to the fact that the world is changing and you cannot rely on some fixed map that has been passed on from generations past because the world doesn't look like that anymore. And instead, you just kind of need to have something more robust. And that's why I like the idea of a compass. A compass works regardless how much the world is changing. That will help you guide through this world and help you guide you to find your place in it as well, and find your place hopefully in such a way that makes place for everyone else as well.
Mm. Simon, I love that. I really do. I'm so glad that you started this, and I'm very interested to see where it goes and the responses that you get from your new project and how men are responding to it and what they're getting from the work that you're putting out there. So thank you for doing all of that.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Well, you know, I love the writing. Thank you so much for the conversation, and thank you for your writing. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure. All right. Bye.
Now we have a preview of an upcoming podcast starting very soon called The Feminist Founders.
You're a business owner who cares more about people than profits, although you still want to make some money, of course. And that can feel mighty lonely. That's why I created Feminist Founders, a podcast that explores how to build a more equitable world through entrepreneurship. I'm Becky Mollenkamp, a coach and journalist, and I'm excited to bring you stories of people who, like you and me, are trying to change the business landscape for good. Check out Feminist Founders wherever you listen to podcasts.
And now a recap.
Okay, I have to say that getting ready for today's interview and reading Simon's writing and then speaking with Simon today, all of this has been a bit of a growth opportunity for me. Yay, growth, yay. See, people, it is possible. Some of the titles of Simon's pieces kind of evoked a knee-jerk reaction in me a little bit. And I had to sit with that. And I was like, nope, just read it. Just hold on, just suspend judgment. And I made myself finish each of the pieces and get to the crux of what he was saying, which is basically what he was saying today, of envisioning a new world where everybody has a place in it, an equitable place in it, but that they know how to get there. And we all help guide each other there. So yeah, so this was a lesson in sitting with my discomfort, because I mean, I did have that immediate reaction, and I really, it is possible, people, to sit with the discomfort, read what somebody is writing, process it, and actually hear what they're trying to say and get to the end of it and go, oh, we do agree. Or, oh, there is some commonality to where we're trying to go. So I hope that people will learn from this and just sort of go, you know what? Don't stop at the knee-jerk reaction. Go beyond that and just listen or just read and see what comes from it.
And be a voracious reader. Read everything. Read all points of view. I think it's really interesting that Simon brings up Jordan Peterson in his work, because years ago, I had a boyfriend show me Jordan Peterson's Rules for Life. I forget what his book is called. And I watched him on many YouTube videos. And I was like, there are pieces where he's not wrong. It's not 100% black and white. So what I really love about what Simon said today is he's just out of date. There's some change that has happened in the world. And it's not black and white. It's an evolution. We're all on this learning process. And I don't think it's that you have to dive into Simon's work on Medium and be like, oh, I now agree with him 100%. He's 100% right. One's 100% right. I'm not, you're not, Simon's not, Jordan Peterson's not.
Right.
But if we can read all these viewpoints, read bell hooks, just like he was talking about, read as much as you can get your stinky little hands on, so that you can see the different perspectives and start to understand. Because I know feminists, some feminists, not all feminists, not hashtag not all feminists, hashtag not all men. I know that some of the feminists are like damn no, we are smashing the patriarchy and we are gonna be the matriarchy.
Mm-hmm.
But there is some sense in that, for me at least, if you replace the patriarchy with the matriarchy, we're still out of balance. Mm-hmm. And I'm not to say it's not going to swing all the way over before it balances out, right? Mm-hmm. We need some adjustment period. We're going to be swinging back and forth for a while.
I think we might be swinging back and forward throughout time. I mean, I
Forever.
think that's why you don't just say, okay, we achieved it, done. No, the work continues. I mean, the way the work is done can change over time, and it can change, based on each individual. And sometimes there's like an ebb and flow. Sometimes you do a lot of work, sometimes you don't do so much work, but evolution doesn't just get to a certain point and stop. Evolution continues.
Yeah. One of the things that I find so compelling, the thing that has just so much drawn me into this type of work, the type that Simon is doing, is I just have this tremendous amount of, number one, interest, but also am so drawn also to the pain that men feel. Mm-hmm. Like, for some reason, I'm drawn to that. I wanted to ask him about this earlier, but he wrote this piece. It's called Men, Guilty Until Proven Innocent. Mm-hmm. And in it, he says, I met this girl and we had a great time chatting and dancing. At some point, she needed to go to the bathroom. So without much thought, I offered to keep her drink for her. I remembered how she looked at me then. A second ago, we were laughing together, but now she was coldly assessing how much of a threat I am to her. Mm-hmm. Too much, turns out. She took her drink, smiling and saying it was not a problem, but I knew she just looked at my face and saw someone who would spike it and rape her. Mm-hmm. I couldn't bear it. I was shaken, and I didn't wait for her to come back. And I think of how much pain has been caused by some men for women and for men. Mm-hmm. For women and for men. Right. We are in this together. We are in it together. Yeah. And we have to find a solution that works for all of us. That's what I feel so strongly. I feel pain for his pain for having had pain. It is, the gender wound is painful. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's, God, this is such a pessimistic way to look at it, but there's pain everywhere. But we have to face it and try to heal it.
But fighting men versus women is not going to fix it.
Very true. That is very true. It's a long road, but I think there are lots of people, Simon included, the two of us, who are
our listeners
who are listening. Yeah, our listeners who are doing the work, trying to have the conversations, trying to listen, trying to do the work, do the reading, and just learning to be allies to each other, regardless of what that allyship contains.
And listeners, if this spoke to you in any way, share it with a friend, share it with someone, get this perspective out there.
Yeah, and let us know how this landed for you. Like, what thoughts come up for you from listening to this? Read some of Simon's work. Let us know, let him know what comes up for you for this. Discomfort more than likely will come up for you. Sit with it. Move beyond the discomfort. Read the pieces. Mull it over for a little bit first, if that helps you. And then maybe respond to it. You don't have to go with your first reaction on everything.
Great work, partner.
Thanks. You too, partner. Thanks, everyone, for listening today. We will be back with more Madness Cafe next week. You can find us on Instagram at Madness Cafe Podcast or email us at madnesscafepodcast@gmail.com. Bye.